Dear YouTube Thought Police, since I resurrected my radio show in the latter part of 2023, I have attempted to utilize your platform to share audio excerpts, short little clickbaity audio segments designed to encourage people to go to the website and listen to the whole thing, that I've uploaded to your platform in the hopes of finding an audience of like-minded souls, if such things exist, who may or may not appreciate the content that I am painstakingly producing for their listening enjoyment. So in that short time, you banned one video, gave me a warning, and then you banned another and gave me a strike and a 1-week ban. And when asked if I wanted to appeal on both instances, I said, yes, I do want to appeal. And on both occasions, my appeal was rejected. And the reason given was that I had violated community standards and that you do not allow vaccine misinformation on YouTube about the COVID-19 vaccines. All right, so first of all, in the first instance, the first time it happened, I didn't even mention COVID-19 vaccines. I was talking about the ordinary childhood vaccine schedule, and I wasn't even taking a position on them. I was simply explaining what the published science in major medical journals had to say about them, specifically about the concerns related to the neurotoxic adjuvants that are found in many of those childhood vaccines. This has nothing to do with the COVID-19 vaccines, yet your decision stated that my video was being suppressed and banned, and I was getting a warning because you do not allow misinformation about COVID-19 vaccines, despite the fact that I never mentioned such things. You did not provide a mechanism for me to discuss this issue. I didn't get to talk to a human being. I just had to accept the obviously flawed judgment by whatever technocratic authority constitutes the YouTube decision-making machine. I'm not convinced there was even a human being involved in the chain of command that led to this decision. But if there was, this segment is for you specifically. You know how in Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal Lecter was talking to multiple MIGs in the next cell? I'm talking to the YouTube Thought Police. One-on-one. Are you listening to this? Good. Then pay attention.
Starling?
Sir?
Miggs is dead.
How?
The orderly heard Lecter whispering to him all afternoon and Miggs crying. They found him at bed check. He'd swallowed his own tongue.
I don't know how to feel about this.
You don't have to feel any way about it. Lecter did it to amuse himself.
The second time you banned one of my videos, it was because I referenced, this time I was talking about the COVID-19 vaccines, but I referenced a piece of published scientific research in a major medical journal. I did not elaborate or exaggerate the findings. I quoted them accurately. But once again, you banned the video and you declared that it was against the community guidelines, that it was COVID-19 vaccine misinformation. Once again, I appealed. Once again, my appeal was rejected. Once again, no clear reason was given, and I was not afforded an opportunity to speak to a human being. So here's my question. On what authority do you have to decide that published science, peer-reviewed in a major medical journal, is misinformation? How could you be so possibly arrogant and ignorant? The hubris. It's astonishing. What were you trained to do? How did you get these jobs? Do you have a PhD in biological medicine, gene therapy, immunology, epidemiology? Are you a higher authority than published peer-reviewed scientific research, blah, 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 blah? Are you a higher authority than that? Do you know better than science? I'm talking now to the Gibble heads who work at YouTube. I know you all think you follow the science. So let me ask you this. If you follow the science, if you trust science, then why are you suppressing and banning and censoring science? Is that not a violation of your own technocratic religious principles? It appears as though the policy at YouTube is that you will ban and censor anything that deviates from WHO talking points. But let me remind you of something. The WHO is not an elected body. It is outside of any known democratic processes. Nobody there is accountable to anyone. They are funded by corrupt governments and private interests. For instance, Bill Gates is one of the biggest funders of the WHO. And I know he has a controlling interest in what happens at YouTube as well, just as he does in the mainstream media. He was also a massive shareholder in the Pfizer BioNTech experimental gene transfer injection.
Bill, how well do you think the media has done at policing itself when getting the facts right? And did it damage the world's ability to fight this pandemic?
Well, I think the mainstream media did a reasonably good job. You know, it's a little too bad that the death number that was published daily didn't say, you know, unvaccinated X percent, you know, vaccinated Y percent, because then people would have seen the, you know, phenomenal difference in terms of risk of dying being somebody who wasn't vaccinated. So, you know, maybe next time we'll find a better way to get that message out. The current vaccines are not infection blocking. They're not broad, so when new variants come up, you lose protection. And they have very short duration, particularly in the people who matter, which are old people. The scale of the misinformation, once you move past the mainstream media, is so wild, you almost have to laugh about it. I mean, you know, Dr. Fauci and I are just killing millions of people to make money. You know, hydroxychloroquine is this miracle cure that somehow he and I have masterminded, avoiding people saving their lives by taking this thing. There's no doubt that the misinformation enhanced vaccine hesitancy, and that maps to hundreds of thousands of deaths. There's no doubt that the idea that, you know, we need the freedom not to wear a mask, you know, and that's some, you know, thing that you've got to show, that in many cases that led to spreading the disease into locations where elderly people had very high death rates. You know, I have to say, given the toll of this pandemic, you know, 20 million dead globally, million in the US, and it could have been way more fatal. We just got lucky that the death rate per case was like 0.2%. And so, you know, as we look back over the pandemic, you know, having the politicians speak out, that doesn't work very well, because then you have a lack of trust. The CDC in our country could have been more front and center. Dr. Fauci became front and center. And, you know, the key messages about the vaccine is good, you should take it, and some level of mask wearing is good. I don't think he ever confused anybody about the primary messages that saved lives.
Now, when you see people and look at the films in China and South Korea, whatever, everybody's wearing a mask. Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks.
You're sure of it? Because people are listening really closely to this.
Right now, people should not be walking. There's no reason to be walking around with a mask.
That until we have a vaccine, masking, physical distancing, avoiding crowds is the public health proven way to go.
When you're in the middle of an outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better, and it might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think that it is. And often there are unintended consequences. People keep fiddling with the mask and they keep touching their face.
Does wearing a mask give people COVID-19?
Does wearing a mask give it? No.
Okay.
Not to my knowledge.
As I'm talking to you, I almost want you to break fourth wall and say, like, is there a Donald Trump on your shoulder that you're running this through? Because obviously the president has said things. I mean, the president has said, like, he says a lot of people say masks don't work, and he's ridiculed people for wearing masks. And I guess my question to you is, like, the science does say masks work, right? Like, this is really important that people wear masks. And when we see big crowded events of people not wearing masks, that's not good.
Chris, I have been crystal clear for a long time
Yes.
in what I've been saying. I don't think there's any ambiguity of what I've been saying. Masks are important. They're effective. Combine it with physical distancing, avoiding crowds, and washing hands, and it works. End of story. It's true.
What about masks? I think there are a lot of people in America who are confused about whether they should be wearing a mask. And in the United Kingdom, for example, they've scrapped that altogether.
Well, that's interesting. What is the downside of wearing a mask? I mean, it's got to be tough. You have to wear pants. This is tough stuff. These societies are so cruel. Why do they make you wear pants? I'm trying to figure it out.
We're very glad you have yours on.
That will be on the web. For sure will be on the web.
And then at that point, we didn't really understand the fatality rate. We didn't understand that it's a fairly low fatality rate and that it's a disease mainly of the elderly, kind of like flu is, although a bit different than that.
This is Winston the homicidal computer with a very special announcement. You do realize you are listening to completely deranged, corrupted fuckwits who contradict themselves at every turn, correct? Okay, now back to your regularly scheduled programming.
So this is a case of a single individual who not only has shares in the product, but controls the agency that recommends that product and has massive influence on a media venue online like YouTube that gets to decide whether any criticism of his product should be allowed on the platform or not. And it doesn't matter how well sourced, how respectable the medical journal may be, how vigorously peer-reviewed the research is, if the findings deviate from the financial interests of the pharmaceutical industry that have corrupted this entire process, you believe you have the moral, intellectual, and ethical authority to censor, to ban, and to suppress the information. So what does that make you? It's a rhetorical question because I know you can't answer it. I know you're desperately trying to rub together the one or two brain cells that you may have in order to come up with an answer, hugging each other in your safe space, remembering each other's pronouns, virtue signaling your native land acknowledgements to one another in an effort to communicate to the rest of the tribe that you're lovely, wholesome people who are fit to be invited to backyard barbecue parties. I'm sure you're lovely people. I'm sure you have a great time with your families during the holidays, Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever religious tradition you observe. But let me tell you what you are, just to clear it up for you, once and for all. You are corporate, totalitarian, technocratic fascists. That's it. That's what you are. That's what you do. So remember that. The next time you're at one of your fancy cocktail parties, talking to each other about how Donald Trump is undermining democracy, just know that deep down, and I hope you can hear my voice whispering this in your ear, that you're nothing but a bunch of sniveling, creepy little, delusional, pro-censorship, pro-war, pro-farmer, fucking gibbleheads. Is that clear? Okay, good. And now we understand each other.
This is Winston the homicidal computer, and you've been listening to an excerpt of the Velvet Buzzsaw on Cinephobia Radio. For the complete episode, visit the website at www.cinephobia-radio.com. So until next time, vidi well my little droogies. Vidi well.